everyone, we're Gabby
Karim
and Jules,
and you're listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health.
Last season, we took you behind the scenes of some of our mock MMI stations.
So we've talked about the GAMSAT and we've talked about the interviews. So now on to the next step. This season, we're talking all things getting ready for med school.
We will be running you through what a day in the life of a medical student looks like, what study techniques to know about, what your career is going to look like, and much more.
So stay tuned and get ready to get med ready. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Making of an Incredible MD by Allied to Health podcast. Today we'll be talking about dealing with disappointment to sort of provide some advice and support for students who are going through similar experiences, whether they didn't receive an interview offer or they haven't received a med offer. So we thought it'd be a really good sort of episode to do so that students can sort of have something to relate to and hear some stories from people who have been through similar situations. Before we get started, I'd like to make an acknowledgement to country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today. For me, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as pay my respects to any people who are Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander that might be listening to this podcast today. So today we're joined by the lovely Vera. She is currently studying dentistry at the University of Melbourne, and she's also working at Allied. So Vera, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction, Karim. So hi everyone. My name is Vera, as Karim has said, and I'm currently studying first year dentistry at University of Melbourne. At Allied, I work on the background ops team as an events manager and half a community manager along with my other fellow half, Carleen. And I also am a Section 2 tutor, GAMSAT at Allied. That's about me.
All right, beautiful. So as you guys can see, very involved at Allied, keeping very busy with her studies as well, which is great. So really, Vera, we wanted to find out about your GAMSAT story today. You have, I think, an interesting GAMSAT story, and I think our listeners would really benefit from it. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience, how many times you sat the GAMSAT, and what you did to prepare?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I checked the GAMSAT a couple more times than most people around me. Also, I thought after going into my course, I realized a lot more people actually take it more times than I do. But anyway, I sat it a total of 4 times, with the final sitting that got me into my current course being last May. So this was when the GAMSAT first went online. In terms of sort of the differences between the sittings, I went into the first 2 sittings relatively blind. If I'm completely honest, I think it's because the perception that I had about the GAMSAT back then was that it wasn't something that you could entirely study for. I still believe that to some extent, because you'll never be able to predict what will pop up on the exam. It just seemed like this thing where everything was just entirely out of my control. But after receiving that second result and talking to other friends about it, it kind of kicked in for me that there are actually things that you can control when it comes to the GAMSAT. So if we're talking about strategies, there were a couple of things that I personally did. And I guess the short answer to this question as to how should you approach the GAMSAT before I launch into everything is that you should probably sit down and confront your fears and weaknesses about it and really hone in on what it is that you personally need to work on.
And Vera, why did you think that when you first time you started the GAMSAT, why did you think that it's not something that you can control? Because I feel like a lot of students have that similar perception.
I think it's also because the way that the exam is also designed is that all the information needed in order to attack the questions is presented in front of you. And I think just the people and the conversations that I was having, it was just very, I don't know, I think everyone sort of had that similar mindset where it was just you go in and it's your natural intellect or whatever it is that you have that'll carry you through the exam.
Like you'll sort of just get it or you don't, sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey Vera, thank you for sharing your GAMSAT story. Did you want to tell us a bit about your mindset when you first got your result? How did you feel in terms of GAMSAT?
Yeah, so as many others, my initial trajectory was heading towards medicine. And I had many reasons for wanting to pursue it that continue to translate into dentistry, which I now do. But I do remember when I first got my EOD, my rejection last year, it really did crush me. I think everyone feels this if they're going through the same sort of thing. And I'm about to get very uncomfortably honest, but I think it's very worth being honest about this sort of stuff because I'm willing to bet that at least someone out there feels the exact same way about this and needs to hear it.
Yeah, we love honesty on this show, so
yeah, that's right. But yeah, I remember underplaying the rejection very heavily, even to my friends and family. I remember closing off and dismissing it and just telling them that I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was going to be all right. But I think, you're allowed to be upset. When you invest time and effort into your dreams, and it feels like in that moment you've maxed out, there's nothing else you can do. You're allowed to feel a lot of pain and anger and even perhaps resentment towards the system. And I think knowing myself personally, I tend to be quite type A. I don't like to do it, but I tend to bury my emotions when I've got things to concentrate on. I'm always thinking about, the show needs to go on. I think a lot of aspiring med and dentistry students are the exact same. It just comes from being in a high stress environment and holding yourself to high standards. But the thing with bottling up about these sorts of things is that eventually when you've reached a breaking point or you're about to, it manifests itself in very unhealthy ways. So that's why I think talking about this sort of stuff with your friends and family and being very honest and allowing yourself to be disappointed is super important.
yeah, I think it is so important to, acknowledge those feelings because disappointment doesn't stop before medicine. I feel like a lot of people think that once you get into medicine, you'll always be happy, no longer be anything to be disappointed about, which is definitely not true. You'll face a lot of disappointments in medicine as well. And I think it's important to talk about those feelings because it's how we cope with them in healthy ways, and it's how we can sort of learn from them rather than sort of dwell on them and stress over it.
100%. I completely agree. Yeah, and I guess for me, personally, the way that I dealt with it, I decided to take a break. I messaged my closest friends and told them that I was going to be absent for a bit. I even messaged Eliza from Howard and told her that I needed to take the week off. And this time I was also very close to cutting it close to I did an honours year last year and I had a deadline. But that week I didn't even go into the lab because I just knew that I wouldn't be able to handle it. And then basically I cried in bed for a week. Very unhealthy. But I feel like it was needed. Yeah. It's almost like I needed to hit rock bottom so I could get back up again. And even now reflecting on it, it feels like such a fever dream and so removed from reality because things have taken for a turn for the better. But I think just thinking about it and recognizing the fact that, yes, disappointment can definitely take a huge mental toll on us is kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so taking that disappointment and trying to learn from it so we can turn it into something good, But yeah, so what changed? So you obviously suffered from this huge disappointment. So something had to change because you're thriving now. You're doing very well. So what changed from when you hit rock bottom?
Yeah, so obviously one thing that I was forced to do was think about the next steps. I think I really took the time to think about not just what I wanted from my career, but also just what I wanted from my life, like what were the personal milestones that I wanted to hit, and was I able to maybe embark upon another career that would be able to afford me the same sorts of luxuries. By the time December rolled around, I was really lucky to get a dentistry offer at UniMel, and I'm actually really happy to report that I'm really enjoying it. And I guess this is the part where I share why I'm really happy with dentistry. I know that a lot of students look at med and dentistry and have a little bit of difficulty deciding which profession is more suited to them. Yeah, so for dentistry, I really enjoy that it's very challenging and complex, yet at the same time targets a smaller and specialized part of the body, so head and neck. And the career itself, you're interacting with patients. Patients often come to you when they're in pain, when they have problems. And just being there for people, I think, is a major reason why medicine and dentistry attract students. As a dentist, you also use your hands a lot. It's a lot of intricate work, which I'm personally drawn to. My favorite hobby since childhood always involved using my hands, like piano, drawing. So it almost makes sense to me as well. At its current moment, dentistry is really intense for me, and I definitely could be more on top of everything. But it's also allowed me to be part of other things as well. So this year, I've taken on a lot more than just study. Instead of committing myself to just the one thing, I've found happiness from other ways, basically. This year, I took up community manager and events roles at Howard, of course. And I also recently stepped up into a vice president role at my uni club, Enactus. And I reflect back, and these experiences have taught me so much more about myself and allowed me to grow in other ways that I didn't think I was capable of. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me, the fact that the work-life balance is slightly more tolerable in dentistry. Think about other things that I want from my career, such as research, education, volunteering, all of which I'm very passionate about pursuing later on, and dentistry would be able to give me a shot at. And there are other things like being able to travel the world, maybe potentially marriage and family way down the track, which I would just have more time to think about and perhaps do.
Okay, and so you noticed that the lifestyle was really something that you thought could be suitable to you in your future. But how did you feel once you chose Dent?
Yeah, well, after I chose Dent, I think it just opened a lot of pathways for me. I think realistically, if my mental health couldn't take getting into medicine, continuously trying to subscribe myself to that lifestyle, which, realistically continues to get busier and busier, as you've mentioned, probably wasn't a good idea. And, this is why I have so much respect and admiration for med students and doctors, and even those that continue to want to keep pushing for greater heights. Because the amount of ambition and grit and self-sacrifice that you need in order to not just survive, but also thrive is just insane. And, as a result, some of my friends doing med are some of the most well-rounded, resilient people I know, like you, Karim. And yeah, that's sort of a really elaborate answer as to how things have changed. I'm going to quote one of my friends here. Life has a really weird way of working out. I don't even know if I fully believe in that. I think that I'm one of the luckier ones as well, and the cards have happened to fall into place for me. But I also think that as humans, we're wired to have this tendency to find a reason for why things had to happen. And that's exactly what it is. You have to really think about why things have to happen and why you want to do certain things. And it relates to career and life, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should be really conscious when you're making those decisions, especially when they are sort of like life-altering decisions. Yeah, but what practical tips would you have for students who are in similar positions to yourself not so long ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people nowadays hear a lot of instant success stories, and automatically it becomes super easy for you to compare yourself to others. But the reality is that there really is no right way for you to get to places. If you didn't get the GAMSAT score of your dreams and you're feeling like, or you didn't get the med offer that you wanted, it doesn't mean that it's the end for you. I think with any sort of dream or goal that anyone has, yes, there are quicker or smarter ways to get there, but not being able to get there automatically is not a metric of your success or your adequacy by any means. So to those of you who got your GAMSAT results recently and are disappointed, I hope you know that you've done well. I know that your score might be saying otherwise, or you might be telling yourself the opposite, but you've really done well. The fact that you've taken the GAMSAT and you've decided that you want to spend your life investing in medicine or dentistry or whatever it is that you want speaks volumes about your drive and your ambition. And perhaps, these recent results are pushing you to reevaluate what you want from life. I think if they're doing that, don't shy away from it. Rethinking about what you want from your life and your career is going to make you uncomfortable, but I also think it's really necessary. Everything in life has potential to be a life experience and learning lessons. So I think even if it might be hard to see now, this is something that will inevitably shape you to be a better allied health professional in the future. Yeah, so I guess those are my final tips. Don't forget who you are and what you want in the grandest scheme of life. Eventually life is going to take you different places. You just have to remember what your passions are. So continue to stay ambitious and stay hungry.
Very, very wise closing words there from Vera. Definitely completely agree with everything you said. Staying ambitious is super important, regardless of what career path you choose, but also remembering to take care of yourself along the way, which is really what this whole episode is about. Even if you're disappointed, you got to remember to take care of yourself and to sort of use that to bounce back, I suppose. But thank you so much for joining us for this episode, Vera. We really appreciate your insight and we really appreciate you sharing your story with us. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you to all our listeners for listening to this episode. We'll be producing more episodes similar to this in the future, talking about other students and how they've dealt with disappointments in terms of the GAMSAT. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health. Please like, share, and subscribe to help spread the word about our podcast. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So send us an email or message on Facebook. All of our links are in the show notes. Thanks. We'll see you next time.